All right, just want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's a beautiful day, Butch.
Oh, hey,
It's beautiful.
This is fantastic.
The sun is shining, and we want people to come.
And there's somebody looking at us right from this
Yeah.
window right there.
Right there, yeah. See those guys? See those guys fishing?
And there's a dog
Yeah. Oh,
right there. Oh,
Yeah.
right there.
yeah. We're glad you joined us, and we've been away a little bit, and not too long. Had to take care of business and Christmas and stuff like that, but we're continuing our work and stories and informing and communicating in the best way that we know how, the residential school. And maybe what we could do is to kind of give an update on some of the stuff that you heard, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
My name is Vincent Yellow Woman, and used to be the chief of Siksika, and my colleague here was in leadership too, and we've known each other for many years, and we both went to residential school. I spent 9 years in residential school, so we're more than happy to share some things with you in regards to residential school. Go.
Yeah, just, my name is Butch Wolflake, and as Vincent had said, we've been known each other pretty near all our lives. And we're also connected through our kinfolk, our family and our clans. And one of the things that I wanted to maybe just bring you up to date is, as Vincent said, these things that we've had to take care of other business. That's why we haven't been on the air for a while. But at the same time, this COVID-19 with this new variants has kind of kept us at home and safe and so forth. A lot of times at the insistence of our children and grandchildren, we've sort of been confined to the home and so forth. But that's which brings me up to interesting. I just suddenly had a flashback at residential school, just regarding this COVID thing. A lot of times at residential school, when somebody would catch something, and due to our close quarters and whatever, it would spread really fast. And it wasn't, it was always it was a regular occurrence that we would all be bedridden, while these people in white coats would come in and check us out and so forth, and so the whole school would be pretty near affected. And I think over those times, I think we began to gain some kind of immunity again on these things. And of course, we never knew what kind of medicines they were giving us. They were always giving us what do you call it, supplements, such as cod liver oil. Yeah. And there was a really awful. That's if you bite into these pills, and a lot of us tried that. There's some really awful tasting pills they would give us. But we all had to take those, and it was like a daily routine for us in regards to getting medicine. And to this day, I don't know. I know about the cod liver oil because that was always a regular staple for us. And so just catching up here. Now that when those 200 and what's that, 215?
Yeah.
That were found in Kamloops that triggered off this national awareness, international awareness really, regarding unmarked graves at residential schools, which prompted the government to move forward with their what they came out with was the Truth and Reconciliation, 94 calls to action, and then September 30th was designated the Truth and Reconciliation Day, and we had our inaugural one last year, and a lot of some provinces didn't step up to recognize it as such as our home province here in Alberta, and of course everybody has read about it in the news. Our Prime Minister took a vacation at that time and wasn't even around for the inaugural Truth and Reconciliation Day, which for us it's like a regular. It's like, yeah, we always have this. We know we're going to get disappointed, and so this wasn't a really big. We just. In other words, we knew this would happen, because a lot of times we would be given promises and whatever, and especially in residential schools, like there was always holding that carrot in front of us, saying you'll be able to go home this weekend, and come Friday, all of a sudden we're told no. We'll let you know. So we would get our hopes up, and then they would be dashed, and so it's a common occurrence. We kind of grew up with that, and that's something that we're still trying to remedy for ourselves, because in our language, our elders always tell us, "Minek just dog, matapis." Just do what matapis, which means don't make promises to people. So that's just some ways that we've had to deal with that. So with this 200 plus graves that were found, unmarked graves found in Kamloops, prompted other First Nations to take a look at them. And then there was Cowesses. They found a whole bunch of unmarked graves there too. And I just, the last school that closed was the Gordon's residential school, just outside of Punichai. And I guess they called it Muskowin. And there was they had some unmarked graves, and they actually had some graves that were marked. But the chief and the head minister, they got into an argument. And as a result of that argument or disagreement that they had over whatever, the clergy called in some heavy equipment, and they had all those gravestones plowed under. So that's something that they're dealing with in that part of Saskatchewan. So now they know where there's some. Now they just have to make sure that they're uncovered, documented, and so forth. Also, within this COVID, with the COVID protocols and everything, the Pope Francis, invited a delegation from Canada to come and have an audience with him regarding this Truth and Reconciliation. And it had to be put off because of the COVID protocols and cautionary. So that's still something down the road that the Pope is open to receiving a delegation from Canada. And people are kind of like iffy about this visit because the Roman Catholic Church has been the one that has been the most reluctant to share records. And just like in the States, they're trying to get they were trying to get Trump's income tax records or tax records, and he doesn't want. He kept putting them off and so forth. And that's what's the same thing's kind of happening here with the Catholic Church. The records. They kept very meticulous records at these schools, which is very, which is an affront to all those Roman Catholic residential school survivors, and also hindering looking around for the graves and where they might be. So here at Siksika, we have about at our last for last briefing from council, they had identified 7 schools, because prior to the 2 residential schools being built here at Siksika through the Catholic Church and Anglican Church, those 2 church-run schools, prior to that, they had churches. And they ran they had their own little residential schools here and there on the reserve. There's about another 5 sites where they had them, where everything was centralized. At Crowfoot School, Crowfoot Residential School, and Old Sun Residential School. So that's the latest, and now the latest count has grown over 7,000 unmarked graves across Canada, which has prompted the states. Is another interesting development. They've started to take a look at the issue of residential schools, starting with Carlisle Indian Residential School, where a lot of Native American children were sent. And fortunately, in the States, they have was he a Navajo or Hopi? I know she's a Native American chair for the interior. And she has come out with some visions of what she would like to have done regarding residential schools and those kind of sites. So this has grown quite into a, it's not going to go away, that's the thing. That's why I'm wearing my orange shirt. He likes to dress in black like Yarny Cat. So the 94 calls to action, there's been some development on those. In fact, for ourselves, me and Vincent, we're doing some work with our local town of Strathmore.
Yeah.
And within the 94 calls to action, there's 5 calls to action specifically for provinces and governments and municipalities. And Strathmore, which is a neighboring town to our reserve here, Siksika, they went ahead and we're starting to do some awareness sessions with them regarding our history and our, especially about the residential schools and so forth. So the town has taken a big step forward to work with that. And that's some of the developments that are happening. There have been other, some of our nation members, especially who live in Calgary, they have been asked by organizations, agencies, schools to come in, and these are residential school survivors too. They've been approached to do presentations regarding residential school as part of an awareness. So this is what's been happening since last year, when those unmarked graves were identified. And that's close to Kamloops, Williams Lake, there's some findings there also. So this thing has just started. It'll take a few years. Can't be done overnight, but I think it'll bring a lot of peace to people who went to residential schools. That these children that never made it home could be recognized, and also Canada could be made aware that this wasn't just I guess you could say a bit of our history. It's pretty well close to 100 years that this. Well, when we did some research on it, it's at least about 150 years of residential school that has been in place here in Canada. So that is going to be a big piece of work that we're helping out with and partnering with non-Indigenous organizations and municipalities, just like what we're doing here at Siksika. So this is a step forward in regards to reconciliation. Reconciliation is a term saying that we need to work at being on friendly terms and a balance of information. At least that's what I understand reconciliation is all about. And just here in the past week, we have lost 2 of our elders that were residential school survivors. And those kind of stories that they left with us, and the stories that they didn't share, those are gone from those. Those are left with those 2 elders that we lost. And they had a chance to share that with their family. But as it is with residential school survivors, they're not very open about just talking about it. It's in a lot of ways, it's very shameful. Some of the things they went through in residential school, some of the things they've seen, and as we all like to protect our children with, we don't want to give them those kind of sordid details and information. So that's why me and for myself and Vincent, we're more than open to talk about these, and which hopefully will prompt other survivors to step up and share these stories. And there's developments here, as probably in other First Nations across Canada, that are starting to put together a library, so to speak. And with the electronics that we have, like what we're utilizing right now, like these tapes that we're doing, these sessions we're having right now, these are going to be permanent records here at Blackfoot Crossing Historic Park here at Siksika Nation, who have been more than, they have how would you say it, they're planning ahead to have an archive of information. And there's other agencies here at Siksika Nation, like the Olsen, where the Olsen Residential School used to be, is converted to an Olsen, it's our Olsen College. And they are looking at some issues regarding residential schools, honoring them, and also putting together I guess you could say a virtual tour of that residential school that's still standing there, what used to be the Olsen Residential School. So that's one of the developments that they're working on, as well as bringing in survivors that were actually at that school and getting their stories. So there's a lot of valuable information out there that is slowly coming out. Did you want to add anything on?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize what has happened since the discovery of the 215 in Kamloops and right across Canada, and in particular here in Siksika. They've identified 7 sites that they will be using their X-ray equipment to, and it's not going to be a rush job. They're taking their time, and they want to make sure that they cover every area, and probably talk to some elders, and so the elders will share their stories. Just don't know how the whole thing, but they just want to make sure that is this a site that you think we could, and I went with them with one site and pointed out the stories that I heard that were passed on to me, that this was a potential area that they need to look at. And it's interesting to find out that the sites that we're picking out are always close to an existing cemetery. And so it's kind of what's been happening with some of the sites that they found, the unmarked graves. So they'll be doing things here in Siksika, and when that's going to start, we don't know. Spring is coming around the corner. The ground is still frozen, so hopefully they will get to work once the ground is ready for their equipment. Also, when we're talking about the 94 calls to action, there's so many things there that's good for both communities, and in particular for us, and then the people on the outside, how they can better educate themselves and be informed and to know who they are, and in particular the history of First Nations and their community. And I'm so excited about the town of Strathmore, how they've reached out to us, and we were talking about it the other day. There must be some other towns across Canada, but we're not aware of them. So what we have going over there is the town, the mayor and the council members and the managers have reached out to our community and want to be able to have an understanding and to work together to move forward, both communities, and not about this racism, discrimination, all that negative stuff that we hear about. We want to be able to sit down and work together. So we're very glad that they've done that. And tomorrow we'll be heading back to Strathmore and teach more of some of that cross-culture communication. And it has to do with 94 calls to action, that the communities, organizations will educate themselves and utilize whatever means that's close to them with First Nation communities to help them to know the history and what happened to us in residential school, the whole 9 yards. And then when it comes to where we are today, I'll give you an example there. There's a leakage study the word leakage just simply means the money that we get here in our pockets here on the land in Siksika, whether we're working here, we get a paycheck or whatever money that we get, and how much of that is leaving the reserve, the leakage of the resources that we have, not only of our personal checks that we receive, payroll and so forth, but the the organizations here on the reserve, and we got lots of organizations. And one of them is the BCHP, SRDL, the Health Department, the Housing, Public Works, Family Services, and the list goes on. And the band administration. Can you imagine the multi-millions of dollars that's leaving the reserve? That's what you call leakage. The leakage study took place a few years ago, and we found out how many millions of dollars were leaving the reserve, and they were going to Strathmore, and they were going to Calgary, and the people were benefiting. The grocery stores, vehicles, people buy vehicles here on the reserve, so where do they go? There is no dealership here on the reserve. And so the list goes on. So the money leaves and it's spent someplace else. And that's one thing. Economically, we could work together across Canada. When you get to know each other and embrace and all this stuff together, we can sit down across the table, and once you know who we are and some of the things that we need and so forth, we could help each other and so on. And then just more recently, on a personal note, Butch and I lost a family member in a tragedy this past weekend. And because of the work and because of the things that Siksika and Strathmore have been doing over the past few years, Strathmore has come to the plate and saying, that one of the drugstores in Strathmore said, we're going to put a bin in our store, and we're going to encourage those people that shop at that store to come and drop off donations into that bin. And the family lost everything in the fire, and so it has never happened before. And Strathmore is wanting to help, and we're getting people from outside saying, what can we do? How can we help the community? And we're in this world together. We're all humans. And I learned the other day, there was one country in the world that treat their First Nation or Aboriginal people, they didn't give them a human title, but they gave them a plant. We're not plants. We're not trees. We breathe. There's blood flowing through us. And so what Strathmore is doing, they're putting all that aside, and the leadership in Strathmore, and according to the 94 calls to action, that's what we want to see. And those three individuals that led the way, Justice Murray Sinclair, Dr. Marie Wilson, and Chief Willie Littlechild, those people were instrumental in working and making sure the TRC was done in a good way. And when it was done, they came and worked hard, put in a recommendation, and that's what it's called, the 94 calls to action. And they would be thrilled to hear what's going on here in our community. Just a small dot in Canada, what Siksika and Strathmore are doing, and to embrace each other. And it all begins by sitting down and okay, we want to reach out to Siksika. And so I want to thank the leadership. I want to thank both leadership here in Siksika and Strathmore, doing whatever they can so we can understand them, and so they can understand us who we are. They're benefiting from us. When I go to Walmart in Strathmore, I see a lot of our members here. When I go to McDonald's, I see a lot of our members there. when I go gas up, I run into people from our community getting gas over there, and the list goes on. Economically, they can benefit from us, and we could work together and say, here's some things that you could help us with. And that's all starts by putting aside these differences it's a hard subject, and very dry, very, we don't like to deal with some of these issues that label people groups, but they need to be dealt with. And people, once they know who we are and they appreciate us, and then they reach out and want to help. So I'm very thankful for Strathmore reaching out and doing what they can. Yesterday, all the churches in Strathmore are working together to call their congregation to contribute, and then they'll make a donation to the families here. So that's what you call action, calls to action, and embracing who we are. And we're not, our language is not demonic, it's not from the devil, it's a beautiful language. And by now you guys realize that my second language is not English, it's yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. I've got my numbers mixed up. My first language is not English, and but my first language is the Siksika. That language I grew up with, and to be told it was demonic in residential schools. So now I'm teaching people in Strathmore about our language, and when I'm done with the class, I tell them, "Did you get possessed? Is the devil after you?" So it was over 100 years ago. I don't know, over 150 years ago when that thinking took place. So we got to change all that. And so when I learned the English language, I didn't get possessed. I don't know if you did.
Only when I was drinking.
So anyways, all this crazy myth, and so we're here to educate people, and so it's sad that they found those unmarked graves and really got us upset and angry, and yes, deal with those emotions, but let's be constructive to be able to help communities outside our communities to embrace each other in a good way. So thank you, Butch.
Yeah, just maybe talk, remembering, they call them the baby boomers, the ones that were born after the war and started a whole new change regarding progress and technology and so forth. And a lot of it for us, personally, when I take a look at my family, there was 10 of us. And out of that 10, I've lost 4 brothers, 1 sister. But those 4 brothers I'm the youngest in the boys. So I've got 4 older brothers that have left this world. And with that knowledge and that experience that they went through in residential school. And we're losing these people. So it becomes very, very important to begin working at saving these stories, having these people share them, but at the same time, it's the stories are very, as I said, they're very. Some people, they'll say, it's hard to believe these things happen. Just like the thing about unmarked graves. The other thing we don't have is the others that were put into furnaces. children. During the winter, they died, and they were just put into the furnace. And that's a record that's lost forever. Only through the remembrance of residential school survivors, just like with the unmarked graves, fellow students, peers, they had to go out there and dig these graves, or they had to bring these bodies down into the furnace room, knowing full well where they were going. And they're grown with this kind of trauma. And those are, that when we talk about T and R, the truth needs to come up. And for the generations that are out there, especially our non-Indigenous treaty people, I call you guys treaty people because we signed a treaty with you. You're the other half of the treaty. So with our non-Indigenous treaty people, you need to take a look at what that's all about. And I want to reassure you, it wasn't, as somebody said, you just need to let them know it wasn't their fault. A lot of times these were done very secretively. And when this residential school issue came out, people were horrified that this happened in Canada. But that's the truth. The truth is these residential schools were here. We still have one living structure on our nation that has been converted into a college, but it's interesting that the architecture of that school has been replicated in other residential schools, like that school I talked about in Gordon's, in Punnichai, Muskowgan. And you take a look at these residential schools across Canada, and they're all along the same basic architecture, same structure. And these aren't going to go away. In fact, one of Ocean College's plans is to have that Ocean School as a reminder of residential schools and as a teaching place. And I really commend them for what they're doing with some of the virtual tour that they'll set up in a computer. It's really quite something to see. So with us, we're losing our residential school survivors, their stories, their memories, the language. We're just as Vincent said, our language is still very alive. But unless we do something about it and utilize the people that still speak the language, no matter how little or how much, we need to have that. Yeah. And I also urge our non-Indigenous neighbors, and especially around Siksika Nation, to learn the language. I'd love to be able to communicate with you in our language, as we do in English. And that's something that is something to work towards. So when you talk about the calls to action, for those First Nations that are listening out here, check out the calls to action. There's 5 calls to action for municipalities. And you are part of those municipalities. The municipality borders you. So they have something that they've been told in regards to this Truth and Reconciliation Day and this Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They have been given the go-ahead to do things. And for a lot of, just like the money for those things will be coming from the federal government for them to be able to do those calls to action. And so that's like what we're doing in Strathmore, as we've talked about. So just wanted to mention that, because sometimes people start saying, well, how much is it going to cost and who's going to pay for it and so forth. So that's some of the things.
You know, the reason that we're talking about these 94 calls to action simply is this, very easy. It's a no-brainer. Because when they found those unmarked graves, all of a sudden the phones came left and right, and people emailing us and texting us and trying to get a hold of not only our community, but across Canada. We want to help, we want to help, we want to help. How can we help? And so Butch and I and others, we sat down together and we said the next steps are 94 steps. And that's what you call the 94 steps and calls to action. And that's what we're using. So when in your community, when you're asking how can we help, there's something that we could do. Read the 94 calls to action, and it will simply outline those 5 points that talk about the municipalities, the town, the villages, the
churches.
Yeah, that you're involved with.
Yeah.
It outlines here what could be done, how to communicate, how to help each other and educate and inform and so forth. Like you said, churches, schools, and so forth. It's there. It's all written. It's all done. And so when somebody asks us, what can we do? The first thing we tell them is read the 94 calls to action, and it will outline. Don't come with your own agenda and preconceived ideas, what you see on TV. Come well equipped, come well educated, and those 94 calls to action will really enhance how you want to help and move forward with First Nation communities. And I wish it was there years ago, but it's available now. And we had those 3 brilliant, educated men and a woman that put all that together, and they did a tremendous job, a fine job, and it's all written there. And so when you read it, you're going to find somewhere, and then call the First Nation community near your home. If you're neighbors to Siksika, maybe talk to Strathmore. You're shy to talk to Butch. You're a very shy person. You don't want to talk to Butch. So talk to the people in Strathmore and say, we hear you're doing something. What's going on? They'll tell you. And so I'm excited about how even if we did one town, another town, and we're here in some other places are trying to do what they can. And if a whole bunch of communities did that, the discrimination, the racism would go down, because we're understanding each other. We're helping each other economically, and there's a lot of money, resources that's leaving First Nation community. And if you're a business person and you want some of that money, and how do you get it? And it's by communicating and working with the First Nations in your communities and sitting down and doing what you can, and then helping us to. You say, what do you mean? Well, there's so many things that Siksika can do. Enhance. I know Siksika here, we bought some hotels, 5-star hotels, major hotels. So we sat down with businesses out there and we helped each other. It's called joint venture. We're able to put millions of dollars into it, and they're able to put millions of dollars. And so we own these hotels. And so that's what you can do. There's things that you guys can do, and It's all there, it's all available, and it's putting our people to work. And some of our members can go into hospitality industry. They can study to be bookkeepers, accountants, and so forth. We need that, and so on. So there's a lot that we could work together to sit down. I spoke at Southern Alberta Institute of Technology in Calgary on Orange Shirt Day, TRC Day, and if you want to go to their website, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, and click Orange Shirt Day, it's going to pop up my time with them. My speech was this short, but there was a lot of Q&A, and I like that. I like people phoning in and asking questions and so forth. And that's how we get educated. And so if you want to look at that, I encourage you to do that. And so we got a long ways to go, but we'll get there. And going back to these guys, the TRC and Orange Shirt Day, they were instrumental in pulling this together, and they're heroes and a lot of in our minds what they've done, and they've done a tremendous job. So I don't know, Butch, if you got anything else you want to share?
I think there's somebody waving at us from this house over here, telling us it's your time is just about up. So what I can say is we'll be back next week, barring any thing that might be happening here at the nation, such as an event that we might be called out to. But we're on schedule here to come on again next Wednesday at 2:00. And at that time, I want to share with you some, just like we have this joint, we have this call to action with Strathmore. I want to share some other things that the nation is doing in regards to working with other agencies, organizations, companies, and so forth. So we can take a look at that. And then we can give you an update on the calls to action, which ones are happening. And because there are things happening. And we can give you I guess you could say an update as to how many of those are being done right now. There's 94 of them.
Yeah.
But I know that there's some that they've worked on already, so.
Now.
But we'll get. What was that proper response for that? That's good. Okay. All right. He speaks 3 languages.
Mach schnell. Yeah.
Okay. Niet dekit.
Yeah.
Okay. So we better cut it here, and thank you for listening. And by all means, if you have any comments and everything, anything, you can
please
can send those along. We love hearing people responding to our broadcast, and it also lets me know that me and Vincent aren't just talking to each other in here. So.
Yeah, there's only one view looking at it. If you want to ask us questions, send us your questions.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll answer all those questions that come in.
All right.
And I love to do that.
Okay. So with that, I just want to say thank you and kakiramatsu no.
Karamatsu.